This is The Clash, where the real world clashes with a true Christian worldview. Join former professional wrestler Chris Whaley, known as the Masked Saint, who is an author, pastor, and teacher that brings his wrestling skills into the squared circle and tackles real-life issues. Along with Jeff Dixon, best-selling author, internationally known teacher, leader, and pastor who is not afraid to tackle the tough issues of the world we live in. Together they form a tag team of wisdom in The Clash.
Hi, welcome to The Clash. I am thrilled to be joined by
Chris Whaley.
And I'm Jeff Dixon. And we are going to be your host for this TV show that we hope is going to be something that you look forward to watching as much as we look forward to being able to kind of share with you and talk with you. The way the show works, we call it The Clash because life tends to be an ongoing battle where our Christian worldview is always clashing somehow into the culture around us.
All right.
And so, Chris, I want to start today because today is a show about the power of the choices that we make. It's all about choices. Mm-hmm. You've led people. You've been a pastor. You've worked with people. You've been with people in professional wrestling. I mean, we are the product of the choices that we make.
All right.
And yet, it seems like in life, people just make bonehead choices.
Absolutely.
My question is, why? What has been your experience? Why do people struggle so much with making good choices in life?
I think one of the biggest things is people are afraid of failure. They're afraid that, why if I make this choice, I'm going to do this. If I make this choice, I'm going to do that. And so a lot of times they don't end up making the right choice because they're afraid of making a choice at all. I have the opportunity, as you do, to speak and to share my faith with people. And I often close with this from Jeremiah 18, 1-6, when he talked to the prophet about going to the potter's house. And when he saw him working with the clay, when he got through with it, it just had a lot of flaws in it, or the scripture says it was marred in the hands of the potter. And so he simply took that piece of clay and squished it back together again, put the same piece of clay back on the wheel, and made it into a new vessel. And then God says, cannot I do the same with you as the potter has done with the clay? Or as the clay is in the hand of the potter, so are you in my hand, O house of Israel. So that's the story of my life, Jeff. When I got through my life, it had a lot of flaws in it. And I came crawling to God on my hands and knees. And with all of those flaws, God was able to pick me up, put me back on the wheel, and make me into a new vessel. And so I think that's the great news today about choices, is no matter what choice you've made, no matter how much you've messed up your life, God can still take that clay that you've messed up and make it into something great.
There's hope in that. And so we hope you hear that. We got a good show.
Yeah, we do.
And it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We've got somebody that we want to introduce that I think our folks are going to love to hear.
Yeah.
We're getting ready to introduce you to a very special friend of Chris's. Chris known him for a long time. For me, a new friend. And we're excited. But we're excited for a lot of reasons, because here's the deal. We're calling this thing The Clash because we're being honest about the fact that life sometimes is a battlefield, and sometimes it feels like you are wrestling for your life. And Chris, although you can't tell right now, he's not wearing a mask, but he spent his wrestling career, his pro wrestling career, as the Masked Saint. And if you haven't seen that movie, you need to Google it. You need to go online and find it. It's still streaming out there. It was the International Christian Film of the Year, is that right?
It was Best Picture 2015 International Christian Film Festival.
Oh, I like what I said better. So I give it the best film of the year. It is. Yeah. It is. I want you to hear me. It is the best Christian film you will ever see.
Yeah.
How about that?
Hey,
and I'm a movie guy, so I love
awesome.
it. It is Chris's life story. He wrote the book on that. But we're not talking about that today. What we're talking about, though, is a friend of yours that you're going to introduce because he works in the arena of choices.
Right, he sure does. I was in professional wrestling for 10 years and just met all kinds of individuals I could tell you about. But the greatest guy that I ever met in professional wrestling is a guy by the name of Marc Mero. If you watched him on WCW, you saw him as Johnny B. Bad. He was the world television champion. If you saw him on WWE, you saw him as Wild Man Marc Mero and Marvelous Marc Mero. He was just one of the best performers in professional wrestling. He left professional wrestling really at the height of his career because God had a plan for his life to affect a lot of young people. And he started an organization called Champion of Choices. And now every year he goes into over 100 schools and talks to young people about making the right choices in life. And it is a true pleasure to have him on The Clash. Marc, welcome.
Welcome, welcome.
Chris, Pastor Jeff, it's so good to be on your show, man. I've been excited about doing this and talking with you guys, and it's a great day. I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia, and you guys are in, I believe, Orlando, correct?
Right. We're here in Winter Springs, Florida, which is right outside of Orlando.
Yeah, we're the slums of Orlando.
Well, good to see you guys, man.
Well, Marc, I want you to know I'm a wrestling geek and I'm a wrestling fan, and so I mean I'm honored that you're here. I know you and Chris have known each other a long time, but this is my first chance to really talk to you. So I mean, we're talking about choices, making choices on this particular show today, and I know you spend a lot of time talking across the country about making choices. If you wouldn't mind, tell us what you're doing these days. Tell us, kind of the ministry you're involved in and what that looks like, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I founded my company called Champion of Choices. And this has been I just completed my 17th year presenting at schools, churches, and corporations around the world. This year alone, we went to Puerto Rico, we went to the UK, and it's just been an incredible journey, averaging over 200 events a year. And there's no greater joy than helping another person. The greatest commandments are love God and love people. And you can't do any better doing what we do, helping others. People make good choices because we are defined by our choices. The choice we make today can affect us and our families the rest of our lives.
Right. That's so great. A lot of people know Marc from his wrestling days, but just in case you did not know Marc in his wrestling days, Marc worked for WCW. He was the world television title holder while he was with WCW. He also was the Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion for WWE. He's wrestled the biggest names in the business. You've wrestled The Rock, you've wrestled Stone Cold Steve Austin, and so many others that are definitely well known today. Marc, when you got out of wrestling and started this organization called Champion of Choices, did you ever think that you would be touching the number of lives that you're touching? I mean, I've seen some of your messages on YouTube have had almost 1 billion hits. Did you ever realize that you'd be having that kind of impact on young lives?
I remember when I started, Chris, I was only 47 years old, 17 years ago. And I remember thinking, I can do this for maybe 3 years. No kid is going to listen to a guy over 50 years old. And now at 64, I have never connected better with students in my life. And it's just been an incredible journey. So I never could foresee this going as long as it's gone, and to touch so many lives and change, and the letters we get of students and their parents that say it saved their kid's life. It's just an amazing blessing. I couldn't be happier.
I'm just curious, and I mean, I think our audience, if they're not familiar with you as a wrestler or even what you're doing in ministry, I mean, what was the moment in your life? I mean, obviously you've been a pro wrestler, so you've been in the spotlight a lot, that you got to the point where you made the choice to do what you're doing now. How did you get from wrestling in the ring to where you are now?
Pastor Jeff, that's a great question. And, I meet so many adults, and especially in my corporate presentations, many adults settle for the status quo and they become complacent in life and they say things like, those were the days. Or, man, I'm here to tell you, these are the days. We learn from past mistakes. We grow in grace and knowledge. We can accomplish anything we set our minds to. I'll give you some examples, Pastor Jeff, that, I became a professional athlete at 31 years old. I'll never retire. I'll just refire. I became an inspirational speaker at 47. I wrote my first book at 50. I became an ordained minister at 52. And you just never know what God has planned in our lives, but don't ever give up. There's so many people that have great stories. And, I think that's such amazing about Chris is still writing books, and his stories have become a major motion picture, which, man, I don't have too many friends that have a major motion picture. So it's about reinventing yourself and like I said, never retire, just refire.
Yeah. Well, Mark, I definitely want to ask you some wrestling questions, but I know this might be a little bit hard. But who is the greatest match or the greatest match you ever had when you were in professional wrestling?
That's a great question, Chris, and I get asked that quite a bit, and it's hard to narrow it down to just one because I got a couple of really good ones. I remember Flying Brian at Fall Brawl. We had to go 30 minutes, and that was a really great match. Stone Cold Steve Austin and the King of the Ring was a great match. I've had some great ones with DDP, with Triple H, The Rock. I mean, I've been really blessed to have some good matches out there. So it's hard to pick just one, but if I had to say just one match, I got to go with Flying Brian at Fall Brawl. Was one of my favorite matches, only because it was 30 minutes and we had to keep coming up with new innovative ideas, and we were doing all the high flying stuff, the mat wrestling. So a good combination of different stuff in professional wrestling. Even till you look back on that match, which was 30 years ago, you look at how far ahead we were at that time in our lives.
Yeah.
When you were wrestling, I mean, how did you find that people were reacting to you? I mean, because you were a hero, you were a heel, right? I mean, you kind of did both. You kind of ran both sides of the fence there.
Yes.
How did people react to you? I guess outside of that ring. I mean, when you're just being yourself, when you were just being not in character, I guess.
Well, I mean, I've always treated fans like I love people. So if I'm in the airport or I'm at restaurants or whatever, and someone comes up to me, I'm always very kind to people. And and unfortunately, there are some people that want their privacy, and I respect that too. That wrestlers or people in the industry or the actors or whatever that are not the nicest people in the world. But you got to look at it from their point of view too. They just want to be left alone. They're not on the job. But for me, it was much different, and I enjoyed being around other people that were very similar. Because if you were having dinner with a bunch of the wrestlers, and one of the wrestlers was one of the guys that doesn't want anyone even approaching the table or coming up to us. It's very hard because you really feel bad for someone that maybe was embarrassed or was yelled at, So that's always been hard for me. So I've always treated people the way, and they always say, treat people the way you want to be treated. I treat people better than I want to be treated. So.
Well, I know this story, but I know a lot of people don't know this story. Tell me how you came up with the gimmick Johnny Be Bad.
Well, Chris, Dusty Rhodes, what happened was I was one of the guys that got beat up on television for $150. And I would drive 9 hours from Venice, Florida to Atlanta, Georgia, center stage. And I was hoping to get picked to be one of the guys that get beat up on television. Well, after one of my enhancement matches, Dusty Rhodes saw me on the monitor and he said, I want to talk to this kid. And when he saw me, he goes, hey, kid, anybody ever tell you look like Little Richard? Now, I thought he was talking about a wrestler. So I said, I never heard of Little Richard. He goes, you don't know Little Richard? Womp baba loo baba womp baba boo. And I go, oh, the singer Little Richard. I know who he is. He goes, you look just like him. I think I got a gimmick for you. Long story short, Dusty comes up with this name for this new character. And he goes, I got a name for the new character. Yeah, I think you're going to love it. And I said, well, what is it, Dusty? He goes, Precious. I go, Precious? I go, oh, Dusty, I I don't. He goes, oh, I love that, Precious. Yo, Precious. And I go, ooh. Anyways, that day it was really hot out. I remember just laying outside in the sun, and I thought to myself, man, there's got to be a better name than this. So I started thinking back in the '50s of the songs that were popular back then. There was a song, Johnny Be Good, that was a popular song, And I thought, well, they're making me a bad guy. How about become Johnny Be Bad? And Dallas did this thing, BADD, Dallas Page. So I said, Dallas, can I use that name Bad and Johnny Be Bad, And so I called Dusty. I said, Dusty, listen, I know you like that name, Precious, but I think I got one that I think will even be better. And he goes, what is it? I like Precious. And I go, what do you think of Johnny Be Bad, BADD? He goes, I like it. I go, yes, hallelujah. And that's how I became Johnny Be Bad.
That's great.
Yeah.
A Dusty Rhodes story, right?
Dusty Rhodes story. You can't beat that. Yeah.
When you as you kind of through the years now, as you've been talking, I know you talk a lot about choices. I mean, what is the advice that you give for someone who's really looking, feels like they're at a crossroad in life, okay, and they're wanting to make choices, and they don't have any idea how to start. So you and I are sitting down, we're having that conversation. I mean, where do we start that conversation at? How do we begin?
Well, first of all, we all go through adversity, all of us, and it's through our struggles we find our strength. And the part that I really try to give is people hope that it's going to be better. You got to believe that, and then by sharing my stories on stage and really opening up on my adversity and my bad choices and where they brought me to and starting over and wondering how can I ever make it in life, And I think that really inspires others. We all have a story. And I think when you share with somebody something that you went through that they may be going through, they get it and they understand it because you got through it. Because, guys, we all go through storms in life. Some storms you can walk through, some storms you got to run through. But there are storms that come in our life that we have to hold on with everything we got. We can't let go. We can't give up because, man, I promise you, after every storm, the sun will eventually shine. This will be brighter than you could ever imagine. Just don't give up.
Yeah, that is awesome, Mark. Well, I've got one last question. I know Jeff's got another question for you, but you spent all those years in professional wrestling. Now you've had 17 years of going into the school system and talking to young people about making the right choices. If you could do it all over again, would you have done it the same way, or is there anything you would have changed?
Yeah, that's another great question, Chris. And, people ask me that quite a bit. And I got to tell you that, all the paths I've taken in my life, good or bad, have led me to where I am today. And I couldn't be more blessed, more happy, proud of the things have turned out in my life. So maybe if something was changed back then, maybe the course would have been a little different and would end up right where I am today. So if I have to be honest, even the adversity, the mistakes I made became learning experiences, I wouldn't have changed a thing.
I know, I part of this answer I could already guess, but I want to roll this out. I mean, you're sitting there, of course, right now. When we're filming this, you got the summer off, so you got a little bit of time at home, which is great, and you're going to be on the road again. But so here you go. You got a New Year that's coming up. I mean, what inspires you to keep doing what you're doing? Where does that come from in you, and where do you see it going from here? I guess.
We all look for joy in life. Happiness is up and down, but joy is something that being joyful, but being content. And there's no greater joy in my life than helping another person. And that inspires me. I just want to make a difference, and we're all gonna leave a legacy. And I believe my legacy is not going to be how big my house was, what kind of car I drove, or how much money I had. I want my legacy to be the difference I was able to make in another person's life. That when they hear that name, they go, man, that guy changed my life, or that guy inspired me, or this is why I'm doing this today. And guys, real quick story. This just recently happened. Hopefully I can share this with you. Was years ago, this little boy was only 10 years old. he saw his dad brought him to a community event I was doing. And I used to pass out goal setting cards. It says, write your goals and dreams into existence. And it's kind of a biblical thing in Habakkuk. And so I challenge people to write them down and put it somewhere where they have to see it every day. This little boy wrote down, I want to be a professional bowler on the PBA tour, right? Now, he wasn't a bowler. And his dad had him put it like up on the refrigerator, so they would see it all the time. Now he's only 10 years old. By the time he was 15, he had 48 300 games. This year was his first year on the PBA tour, and he won Rookie of the Year. And his dad sent me the card. He wrote down at 10 years old, I'm going to be a PBA professional bowler. How crazy is that, man?
That's great. That's awesome. Well, yeah, but it's not surprising, right? I mean, all of us, we make choices. Those choices impact others, like dropping a rock or a stone in a lake somewhere, right? That ripple effect just keeps going. And what you're doing today is going to impact lives forever.
Yeah.
And even this conversation, there's going to be somebody who will see this conversation.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, I need to know more about this guy, or that made sense to me. And so, man, I just appreciate who you are and what you're doing. And for me, this has been a thrill.
Yeah.
I love it. And so, Mark, thank you so much for being a part of this show today. Looking forward to seeing you somewhere down the road here.
Thank you, guys. And man, I appreciate what you guys do, keeping a light in this dim world. And man, just keep shining, my friends.
Well, it's tough for us to shine because we're kind of dim bulbs. But, other than that, I think we're okay.
Mark, you speak all over the country. You speak in schools. You speak corporate events. You do community events. If someone wants to get in contact with you about speaking at their school or speaking at their event, what is the best way to get in touch with you?
They can always just go to our website, has all our information, and that is Think Pause, and Pause is P-O-Z, thinkpause.org, O-R-G, thinkpause.org, and maybe you could put the numbers up there. And we would get in touch with you and schedule an event. We're already scheduling for, believe it, it's hard to even say the 24-25 season, which is just crazy, man. Guys, life is flying by.
Well, I can't thank you enough, brother, for doing this, and you're still one of my favorites of all time, and I can't thank you enough.
God bless you, brother. Keep doing what you're doing. We'll see you down the road here, okay?
All right, guys. Thanks for having me on your show, man. Great time.
And we're going to take this section, Chris, if it's okay with you, and let's do some God talk.
Okay.
Let's chat a little bit. Let me just say this, and then you kind of react to that and tell me whether you think I've lost my mind, and maybe I have, or maybe maybe we're tracking the same way here. Mm-hmm. But I don't believe that as a follower that we go anywhere by accident. Mm-hmm. I think that even when we're not where we want to be, God knows exactly where we are, and we're at the right place, at the right time, for the right reason, in front of the right people. Right. And it's that place that we have to choose to be obedient and make the life choices that we need to make, because God wants to use us in those situations. Now, am I crazy, or is that?
No, I think you're absolutely spot on. I mean,
well, good.
There's.
I feel better now.
Yes. No. Every day, you got the people in the workforce. There's going to be some decision that's going to affect them in some way. Are they making the right decision in this job that they have that's going to impact their life more? Young people in school, my goodness, the choices that they have to make every day. There's, that temptation to make the wrong choice. Whether you're a stay-at-home mom or you're a teacher in a school, whatever, we are bombarded with the choices that we make every day, and they impact our life. And I agree with you. I don't think anything is by coincidence. God puts us in those situations, and we're gonna deal with the consequences of those choices one way or the other.
Well, I just think that people in our culture, especially, we call the show The Clash, I mean, I think that God gives us as followers divine opportunities, and we have the responsibility to seize them. And I think part of the reason that we just miss them is because we keep our eyes closed so often, and we just have almost convinced ourselves that we can't do anything.
Right.
We can't make a difference. We can't make an impact. And as a result, we don't step up and step in when we need to. And the next thing you know, life kind of spirals out of control, and we've missed an opportunity. I mean, I think the great news for all of us, you, me, and our viewers, is that God doesn't give up on us. And if I make the wrong choice today, and I choose to go left when I ought to go right,
Yeah.
the great news is I never walk outside of God's care and His love, and He's with me, and He's going to give me that opportunity again to kind of get it right. He loves me enough to give me free will,
Right.
and He loves me enough to let me make choices, whether or not I'm going to be obedient.
Well, think about the biblical characters that also dealt with this. I mean, look at David. Some of the choices he made, especially on the rooftop. You know, I'm not going to get into that, but I mean, he made some pretty bad choices, and yet that's a guy that the Bible says was a man after God's own heart.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the Apostle Paul. You know, I mean, he's at the top of the food chain, and God comes into his life. I mean, he made some pretty bad choices. But yet, here's a guy that God used to give us at least 13 books of the New Testament. And I'm sure there's other biblical characters that you could
I think
of.
of Moses. I mean, Moses was a hothead, right? I mean, he lost his cool, whacked a rock with his rod, and all of a sudden missed the promised land.
Right.
And had to lead that ornery group of people through the wilderness, and ultimately, doesn't get to cross over in the promised land because, again, he has a moment where he just doesn't do it God's way.
Right.
And if anybody's going to get it right, he should have.
Right. Absolutely. And this is, the reason why I know that God gave us the Bible, because if man had given us the Bible, we'd have left some things out.
Yeah, we'd clean our stories up, wouldn't we?
Yeah, we'd have cleaned some of those stories up. Yeah. But God gave them to us, warts and all, and let us see the choices that they made. And in spite of the choices they made, God was still able to pick up the pieces and do something with their life, just like He can do something with your life.
Yeah. And obviously, we would be remiss if we didn't say to you, the most important choice that you're ever going to make is to believe and trust and follow Jesus. Because if you don't do that, you can't have a Christian worldview. You'll never understand the culture. It's never going to make sense. It's never going to be anything that you can ever make an influence or shape. And so we want you to do that. That's important to us. And that's one of the reasons that we're doing this show and spending this time with you. But that's choices. Now, we're going to come back and we're going to wrap this up. Thanks for coming back for this last little segment we're going to do with you. We appreciate so much you joining us today.
Absolutely.
Hope you had a good time. We've had a good time with you. But here's what we know. You don't have to go, but you can't stay here. So we got to get out of here. But Chris, what do we got coming down the pipe? I mean, we got stuff that's going to be coming up, and so each week we're going to be joining folks, and they can stream this, watch us, and what are we going to talk about?
Well, we're going to have interviews like you saw today, and there'll probably be wrestling interviews with some other wrestlers that we're going to have on. But we're going to clash with life too. We're probably, Pastor Jeff, in the most volatile political year of my lifetime.
Wow.
Would you agree with that?
I agree with that. I think it's accurate. Yeah.
And I think Christians are dealing with who am I going to vote for? Wow. And you ever had anybody put some pressure on you? How could you vote for that man? I think that would be a good one to tackle somewhere down the road coming up. Wouldn't you?
I think we could do that. Now, that's definitely one that kind of takes your worldview and crashes into culture just a little bit.
Yeah.
So we look forward to that. And we look forward to joining you next time. And so remember, as you move through life and life clashes into you,
don't tap out.
see you next time.
See you next time.